Hey, good evening, everyone. Are you a tarot enthusiast or maybe a tarot reader or somebody who practices another form of cartomancy? Are you tarot curious? Well, no matter what your answers are, and where you fall on that spectrum, anywhere or everywhere, you're going to want to stick around for tonight's show as we unpack what to expect when you're experiencing tarot divination with our special guest and co-host, fellow faculty member at the Inner Alchemy School, Mystery School, Dominick Guerriero, when we come back. And welcome back. I just want to say before we jump into the show, thank you in advance for liking and subscribing, clicking the little notification bell. And please remember, this is a live and interactive program. So if you have questions for Dominic or for myself, or you want to share your experiences, you're welcome to do that. We do ask that you keep your comments brief so that they will fit on the screen. I know sometimes we get enthused and then we put, paragraph long comments, and it's a little harder to get those on the screen. But those that have to be long-winded because of details and all that, we will check those out after the show. So let me start off by welcoming my co-host tonight, Dominic. Welcome to the show.
Hi, good evening.
This is your first time on the program, right?
Yes.
Cool. Well, it won't be the last. And what I love to do to get started for folks who may not be familiar with you and your path, let's start off first because your path is really this beautiful amalgam, bringing together candomblé and some of the 20th and 21st century traditions and esotericism and the occult. Share with us a little bit about your path, first of all.
Okay, where to start basically? So I come from a Italian, Filipino, and German background in New York City. So we have like little bits of folk Catholicism thrown in there, of course, from the Italian German side. And my mom had her own superstitions and traditions from the Philippines. And it's a lot of it is due to her. Going to botanicas, which are like spiritual shops in Latino neighborhoods, and buying candles and buying spiritual baths. I kind of captivated my interest later on in the orishas and eventually to candomblé. My other influence is my Uncle Dominic's, what we call Uncle Donnie, his wife, my Aunt Elizabeth, and she's a witch, and she taught me how to read tarot cards when I was about 15 or 16 years old in the 10th grade. So those two women are like the start of my influence, and it kicked off from there.
Right on. And so let's kind of continue that conversation. And so she was your introduction to tarot. For as crazy as it might sound, and probably doesn't sound crazy to you, because you've worked as a teacher, you've worked as a practitioner, but it always mystifies me that in the 21st century there are still some people who don't really know what tarot is all about. Or who may have some misconceptions. Share a little bit about how that tool is used and the types of like I don't even know the answer to this question. In your own divination work, is the traditional tarot the only deck that you use, or do you use other divination decks? And explain to people what the difference is.
Well, basically, the first deck I had was the Chinese tarot, which is not very traditional. It's traditional in imagery, but like the system it used kind of like drew from the I Ching. And my mom got me the deck from a New Age shop in Long Island that we went to. that I begged. I was like, Mom, take me here. And she's like, okay, pick out something. So it was what I picked out. And then my aunt had like various decks at her house. When I would visit in the summertime in Pennsylvania, she would show me the various decks. And I would say most tarot decks, I do use some that are more traditional. I tend to like the traditional more. That's just me. But I have some that are like not too traditional. Like I have one that one of my best friends got me for my birthday last year, and it has like four versions of the Lovers card. So it has like a heterosexual couple, it has a homosexual couple of males, it has a lesbian couple, and it has a non-binary couple. So like that is something different for the 21st century because would not have seen that
And
in
so
most traditional
are
decks.
they four different cards, or do you just put one in and take the others out?
They are four different cards.
Wow.
Generally, sometimes I depending on the situation, the client, sometimes I'll leave them in or take them out. Depending on that, and the image of death is not traditional in that deck. It's like a mother holding a child, and there's I forget what the allusion to death is, but it's not the typical like Grim Reaper type that you see and so
Right.
forth. So I do use tarot. I also use sometimes I'll use oracle cards, which are more like practical advice kind of methods that it uses, and then sometimes I'll use like just regular playing cards, although mine sometimes are more artistic looking because I'm very like into aesthetics. If something isn't aesthetically pleasing, it doesn't like really speak to me.
And remind me, your family are from Abruzzo?
Body.
Body. Okay.
Yeah.
So I wondered in your on the aunt that taught you, was she from the Italian side?
No, actual because she's married to my uncle who is Italian German. She is German, Russian, and Polish,
Okay.
actually, with some Irish.
So
And
so do you do when you do your readings using what we would think of as a tradition as regular playing cards? Do you
mhm.
do any of the Italian decks in those readings?
I do have a deck from northern Italy, and it tends to look sort of like the more Germanic looking suits. Like it has hearts, it has acorns, it has like it look. I think it's like they call it the Salzburg style.
Yeah.
And I have a deck of cards from Spain, which look very similar to the ones in southern Italy.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, so tonight's the topic tonight is really for the person who is coming to a tarot reader. I want to remind our viewers, if you are a reader yourself, a practitioner, if you're tarot curious, or you're prospectively looking to get a reading, just let us know in the comments so that we just kind of have a pulse on some of the folks that are watching. But let's start with why or who would come to a professional reader. It's not that it's not really all about just quote unquote fortune telling
Yeah.
and sort of the Hollywood version. Readings can take place for various reasons. Tell us some of those reasons.
It ranges and varies from like the type of situation the client has. Like some people want to know what their spiritual path is and what's the influences around them. So I get that. Like I get other readers and other spiritual workers because they find it hard sometimes, and I find this hard for myself sometimes to be objective in reading yourself so that you can get like a very unbiased opinion. So I have clients that have been coming from like 10 to 12 years from that type of reading, and then I have people that are having situations or problems with their love life, with their career, with their health sometimes. And just to preface this, that divination is not a substitute for any kind of medical diagnosis or legal advice or law enforcement or psychological help. Like it's something that should be done in conjunction with those things. and everything. So it runs the gamut.
Well, we have a question here from Joseph Dita, who says, prospective tarot seeker, do you prefer to give readings for specific queries versus general overviews, or the other way around?
I tend to work from like the general overview to the specific, if the because sometimes the client, I ask them, unless they've come to me for a specific reason, like they want to know about a specific situation. Now, in the process of that reading, the tarot cards may highlight other issues other than what they've asked for sometimes, because when you get a reading, other things are going to come up. But generally, I tend to do like a general overview first, and then and I've even created some of my own spreads for that, and then I tend to go into specifics from what the general overview has highlighted.
So that brings me to another related question. When you're doing a reading, and you're there's two parts to this question. The first one is if I'm hearing you correctly, it sounds like coming to somebody for a tarot reading is really about cultivating a relationship with that reader. So that the deeper that relationship, the more in touch you get, the deeper that connection is. Am I right in that
Yes.
assumption? First of all right. So given that, then I'm realizing how hard it is to be a reader and ask questions of a reader that without putting my own influence in there. So give me a minute, because I know where I want to go with this question. So when you're doing a reading, do you rely on the traditional meanings of the cards? Is that sort of a hard and fast formula? I know I've had people that have come to me and said, well, why would I continue to go to a reader when I could get a tarot deck and a book? Talk to that a little bit about where that falls for you. Do you rely just on the meaning of the cards? Is there intuition? Is there ancestors? And so on. I'm trying not to lead that answer.
It's kind of a mixture of all three. Like there is, you get informed by the traditional meaning, of course, but then intuition also kicks in, and then also the ancestors and spirit guides of yourself and the clients sometimes will point you and steer you in the direction. And sometimes it's just like a feeling. Like for example, I'm gonna be very general, to protect client privacy, but like a card came up recently, and it was like about religious differences in a relationship, and I was like, but that's not what's going on here. It's more like they have two very different worldviews, and so like the literal meaning of the card is something regarding religious or spiritual differences, but that it didn't when I analyzed it, it just didn't sit with me. So like when I spoke on that, the client was like, yes, that's exactly what it is. It's not, and they were amazed. They're like, wow, you got that from just looking at that. So
Right on.
like the traditional meanings are kind of like when they say you're studying art or some kind of discipline or a craft, like you learn the rules and then you can break them afterwards, but you have to kind of like get your feet wet first and know the structure and the traditional meanings first. But then over time, like I find that the meanings kind of, and that's when I teach tarot classes to students, I I tell them, okay, what does that card signify to you? Like one day you'll look at the Queen of Pentacles and like, okay, maybe that is telling me to save my money or invest in something, which is the more traditional meaning of it. Or maybe that's my Aunt Susan is the Queen of Pentacles and she's about to come into some money and she's going to give me something like that. So, or maybe that card reminds you of her or her energy, or maybe it reminds you of yourself. So it sometimes the meaning of the card will change depending on the circumstances and what question you're asking.
And along those lines, what about the person who comes to you, like, let's say, for example, that the person who comes to you for a reading is an LGBTQ member of the LGBTQ community. Does the personality and the circumstance and the sort of the ethos, the whole everything surrounding that person, have an influence and shift your interpretations of the cards as well?
Definitely. And I think, like, what people need to realize too is that the kings, the queens, the court cards are not set in stone. Like, a man can show up as the Queen of Wands, a woman can show up as the King of Swords. These can represent qualities. They're not necessarily like tied to specific genders or something. It's more of like the energy of the situation sometimes, and so forth. And there are like tarot decks now that are more geared to the LGBT community. There's also books. I haven't read it, but I read the other book about Queering the Craft by Cassandra Snow, who you interviewed.
Queering the Tarot.
Queering the Tarot, yeah.
Amazing book. I know she's watching us tonight, or she watches the show, so I don't know. She just got out of the hospital, and we send her our love. But I highly recommend that book. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said before too, with that deck, it had like the different types of genders and situations, which you wouldn't see like maybe even like 10 years ago.
Sure.
So even the style and the art of the makers of the tarot today is evolving and changing with the times.
And what role do you think, if any, does storytelling play in the getting a tarot reading experience?
I think it plays a pivotal part, because like when you're looking at the cards, it does, and that's one of the methods I use for teaching, is like what's the story that the cards are telling you? You know, what's the root of a situation? What direction is it heading in? What's the outcome? And then from looking at these, and that's another thing people kind of get tied to, is like the idea of fortune telling, like, you know, it's set in stone and everything. A lot of things are not set in stone. The cards are just showing you the influence and the possible outcome, the events, if you're not, you know, unless you do something to change that, which is, you know, where magic comes in.
So yeah, that's what I was going to say. So isn't that would it be fair to say that from your perspective, the tarot shows us the realm of possibilities, and weaves a story, but ultimately it's that person who's getting the reading that can make a decision, either to be the sort of the passive, play the passive role in that story unfolding, or to say, oh, wait a minute, this is my story, I'm going to take that pen.
Exactly. And I'm going to date myself by using this example because I saw it today on Facebook. From the 80s show Dynasty, where what was it, Joan Collins' character Alexis, she gets a reading from some Italian psychic, and the psychic turns over the death card and she's like, the man you're going to marry he's going to expire. And it happens in the show. Her husband dies of a heart attack. So I think sometimes people have this concept that's kind of like that, like, boom, you get this card and it's like you're chained to that fate and there's no way to alter it, where it's not like that at all.
Right. It's about reclaiming your personal power. Well, when we get back, we're going to take your questions for Dominick Guerriero, and we're going to take a brief break to talk about to continue the discussion of our stories and how much our stories matter with this public service announcement from the Charter for Compassion. More when we get back.
Hi, I'm Adrian Grenier, and I'm a guy you might know. That's why I've chosen to speak to you today, because you know my story. Well, some of it anyway. But what if you knew everyone's story? What if everyone on the planet was familiar to everyone else? The Charter for Compassion wants to find out. They're asking you to tell them a piece of your story. One moment of compassion that changed your life. Each story will be inspiring in its own right, But all of them together will reveal a world of compassion, happening right now in places all over the world, as diverse as Kentucky all the way to Pakistan and everywhere in between. Imagine it. Thousands of stories told one person at a time. Someone once said, "There isn't anyone you couldn't learn to love once you've heard his or her story." Stories make us care. Stories help us understand. Stories breed compassion. And if there's one thing we need right now, in our politics, in our dialogue, in our communities, in our world, it's compassion. Go to charterforcompassion.org and tell your story. And while you're there, affirm the charter and make a commitment to make the world a more compassionate place. But it's only the first step. Now it's time to practice. It's the only way to a peaceful world. I can't wait to hear your story.
And we are back with Dominic, and we're talking about the experience of having a tarot reading. And for those who would like to know how to get in touch with him, I'm going to go ahead and put Dominic's information up on the screen. And tell us a little bit as we come back, and there are several people that are popping on wanting to say hello, so I'll get those on the screen in a minute. But tell us what folks can find at Tarot Voyages.
So I basically do 3 types of readings. One of them is like has to be in person. The other 2 don't. The first one is, you know, a tarot reading where it depends on the block of time and so forth. Like there could be like a more in-depth reading, and then some people do have like just quick questions that they want to ask. So I have those 2 types of services. I also do more like mediumship readings where I don't use the card. It's more like I'm using my spirit guides to talk to your spirit guides and ancestors, and vice versa, like like a mini seance. And that one is more free flowing because I really have no control over who shows up sometimes. It's kind of like when we had the show, like, you know, you had me in the waiting room, and then it's sort of like whoever shows up in the waiting room is that. And then the third type of divination I do, which is like has to be in person, is the bucios, or the dilogun, which is a Orisha divination, where you find out who your Orisha is and so forth. And then I have variations of that because I also work with Bombajira and Eshu, so people come to me to find out about that tradition and so forth. So.
And does well, let me just really quickly. Andrea is here to say hello. Frankie Rose remembers the episode, so we're all dating ourselves here. I guess there's no point in my pretending that I was too young to remember that. And Sarah says hey as well. But let's that was another question I was going to ask. And folks, if you've got any questions, be sure to you know, type them in the comments so that we can ask Dominic. Is there a role or an overlap or some intersectionality between your work as a minister in Candomblé and your use of the tarot cards, or are those forms of divination completely separate? Talk to us a little bit about that.
In some ways, because the bucios are like a completely different form of divination. Even the way that it's used, it's very mathematical and kind of similar to geomancy, and you know the orishas speak directly through that. With tarot cards, not so much. However, like spirits that may represent the orishas, like when we talk about things like Umbanda, which is like a form of Spiritism in Brazil, where we have like different African spirits or native that kind of act as intermediaries between us and the Orishas. Like this, you know, when we're talking with those kind of spirits, that sometimes crosses over into other forms of divination. So there are things, there's a voodoo tarot, there's a tarot of the Orishas, and so forth like that, but they are more with dealing with those types of entities that act as kind of like a intermediary.
Jody has a question here. First, let me just say, Jody said earlier, as someone
Mhm.
who's had a reading, Dominic is wonderful. So some props for you there. And Jody wanted to know, wondering what your thoughts are on spells done using tarot. Great question.
That is a great question. Now, there's different viewpoints on that. From what I was taught from various teachers and sources, and from my own experience, is it's usually better to have a separate deck for that, um, because sometimes like the energies of the spells may not mesh well when you're doing readings for clients and so forth. So that is one thing. Um, and also sometimes like with spells sometimes you have to like put markings on things or burn things even, so you might want to get like a like what I used to do like with that. I would like Barnes and Noble sometimes has by the checkout line like these little like mini tarot decks that are like maybe like $10-15, not too expensive, and you don't mind if you have to bury the thing or burn it or something like that. But you might not want to do that to your $60 Salvador Dali deck, which may be out of print. Like there are some decks that are ridiculous, like the Witch's Tarot by Ellen Cannon Reed is like $100 now because it's out of print. So you
I
know.
so have to admit, having done that in a situation where I wanted to use a specific card, didn't have any of those inexpensive decks, but had a deck that had fallen out of use with me, and I hadn't used it in probably in well over a year.
Mhm.
And I used that card, and I swear within 3 months, somebody said, "Oh, I've been looking everywhere for this, whatever the deck was." And, the last place I could find it on eBay was $250, and it went for a lot more than that. And I just wanted to shit myself. I was like, oh no. It was, so what I do now is when I have decks that are really kind of standard decks and they start to get older, is I sort those cards by card and keep them in baggies, so that when you need an Empress, you pull out an Empress from those decks that could be used for Magic, and then they're never used again for
Yeah.
divination. Joseph has a question here. Can you suggest the best deck for someone wanting to learn tarot? Rider Waite has never grabbed me, and should I just keep at it? And the second part to that question, which is not being asked by Joseph, is is there any possibility that you may be either within the Inner Alchemy platform or elsewhere teaching a class for those who want to learn how to use the tarot?
Well, I'll start with the second question first. I was thinking of starting one with our platform. I wanted to get more feedback from the students and faculty on that. So hit me up, let me know what you think. I also do like private, one-on-one tutorial sessions too for people. So if you're interested in that, message me and I could set up that, because sometimes um, I used to teach high school in New York City. So I find that, some students learn better in a group. It's some like individual instructions better. So it depends on the person. Um, as far as what Joseph asked with the writer, now the writer, I have an interesting relationship with that, because I had it as a teenager, and it, like Joseph was saying, it didn't grab me as first, but over the years it kind of grew on me and so forth. So now it's like one of my standards. But I think there are other like quote unquote, I don't like to call them beginner tarots, because even a quote unquote beginner tarot can, you can do more advanced things with it. It's just a matter of perspective, um, and so forth. But I would recommend to Joseph, and Frankie's also asking kind of a similar question. What to recommend from the beginning? Choose a deck that represents something that you are interested in. And there is like a deck for everything under the sun. I have to say, like there's a manga tarot, there's ones that have like erotic art. There's I have an Etruscan one which I love, and my great grandmother loves too. So it got her approval. And
Wouldn't you
so
say
like
that's Would you say that's an important part of that, is that the
Yes.
reader needs to have a connection to that deck? So if Rider Waite doesn't speak to you right now, and Frankie is saying, I don't know if this is real
The
or if
Golden
this is
Girls time.
suggested, but that would be such an amazing. If that's not
There
real,
is one.
it should be. Is it?
There is one.
That would be an amazing deck. I may have to. I keep swearing I'm never buying another deck, but
Yeah, same, but it doesn't work that way.
yeah.
But
Oh, and I guess Frankie has it because she says yes, it is real.
yeah, it is real. I have seen it. Someone did a reading with Instagram on it the other day. But yeah, the most important thing is that it speaks to you and you have a connection to it and you find it aesthetically pleasing or and so forth, because some people like more abstract art, some people like more realistic art. And now like there's literally a tarot for every type of interest or hobby or genre and so forth. If you like certain like the Golden Girls, and it works for you, then use it.
And one final question: we do try to keep the shows between 30 and 45 minutes, and we'll see if more questions come in and you're able to go the full 45. We'll keep it going. But if not, I wanted to get this question in because it's something that a couple people have asked offline, and that is: would you say, is it fair to say that from your perspective, the reason you want a deck that speaks to you, that you have a connection with, is that the tarot actually, less than being like some other oracle devices that have very specific meanings, opens the door to something in you? Or do you see that a different way?
Well, if the reader has to like be able to connect with the symbols, and it's not just the symbols, it's the colors, it's the texture. I know some readers don't like the borders. Some will actually cut the borders out and so forth. So it is, I would say, the tarot, and this is something that I think kind of does get glossed over, because more people are coming for like, not everyone, but like more for like that fortune telling experience and so forth. But the tarot is also a tool of exploration, of self exploration, of um, tapping into the unconscious symbols. Like if we were to get like all Jungian, and there is a Jung tarot also, the tarot is one of those keys that opens up the symbols of the unconscious, I would say.
Right on. Well, I want to first of all thank you. I want to say that so far everything that I'm seeing from students in the Inner Alchemy Mystery School, which we'll talk about in just a second, and the classes that you teach there, everybody is resoundingly saying yes. So your feedback on whether you're going to teach a class, I think we established that might have been a little bit, that might or might not have been a setup on my part. But I know that several people have said, I just wonder whether Dominic's going to go there. But let's talk as we wrap up a little bit about, we've got the Inner Alchemy Mystery School, which is, a group of 6 practitioners right now on our faculty who come from various traditions and backgrounds and practices. And tell us a little bit about the course that you're teaching there now, and where possibly that tarot class might fit in as well in the future, and anything else you might be interested in teaching, or teaching outside of the platform as well.
Well, I definitely now want to do a tarot. I mean, I was kind of marinating on the idea, but given the feedback from others, I think I will definitely look into it. I have like the written materials and everything, but so the class I'm focused on right now is the 7 African Powers, which is an introduction to the Orisha religions of the African diaspora in the Americas, and it has evolved organically in a way that I did not expect. Like I had everything mapped out, of course, because I come from a secondary education teacher background, so I'm used to making lesson plans and but even in that setting, you always have to plan for variables because students will ask questions. And one of the students in the course she asked me a question in the comments, and I was like, oh, I didn't think of that perspective. And so I made another lesson, which I did not intend to. Actually, the topic is divination. It's related. Divination within the Afro diasporic traditions. And I made another lesson just based on that because of the question that she asked. So that, and then I saw a clip from the TV show American Gods, where they're featuring the Orishas in this current season 3. And then I started thinking, I was like, but what about like the whole view of Orisha in popular culture and TV and literature and music and film? And so I put together a quick lesson on that too. So it has gone in a direction which I didn't intend, but it's like Bob Ross used to say, like the happy little accidents have happened.
And let me tell you, as someone who's actually taking that class with everybody that you're teaching, I as somebody who's actually, whose class on Stregoneria was originally intended to be 26 lessons, boom, boom, done. That's all I'm going to tell you about it. I promise you, from what we've seen in the handful of modules that you've already done, I probably wouldn't imagine that you're going to get out of that class anytime soon, because it's taking on a life of its own, and it just gets more expansive and exciting and incredible. I mean, I really can't. Those who know me know that I'm not overly generous and effusive with compliments that aren't deserved. This course deserves the accolades and the compliments that everybody's saying. Rose said it's amazing. It's an amazing class. Frankie said so. So thank you for that, first of all. And for folks who want to take a look, you can actually see and poke around in Dominick's class for 7 days risk-free. We've got a 7-day free trial that you can come in and poke around and see all the other classes as well at interalchemy.mn.co. And we'd love to have you there. I want to take this time to thank you for spending the last 40 minutes or so with us. And then I'm going to put back up on the screen. I'm actually getting a little better at chewing gum and talking. There we go. Put back up on the screen where people can reach you and can reach out to you for services and classes. As you said, you do private coaching, private classes, as well as divination and other services as well. Correct?
Yes.
So if somebody's looking for private tutoring and coaching, please do reach out. And just to let folks know, because everybody's response has been so good, we've had like 15 or 18 people watching live, which is about what normally happens on Facebook. But then and another 15 or so far on YouTube. But we know that this reaches about 100 people each week in new viewers. So if you're watching this, and would like to hear more from Dominic, the good news is all the faculty members at the Inner Alchemy Mystery School are on rotation. So Dominic will definitely be back, maybe with some guests next time around. I've got some ideas on some people that I think we would love to have on the show, like maybe Leilani, and we'll just put it out there. That'd be fun to have some of those folks on for some topical discussions. But keep in mind, guys, you can ask questions and engage Dominic right here under the comments for this show, and we'll make sure that we get back to you as well. Dominic, thank you so much for being here. I love and appreciate you, and we love and appreciate all of you guys who are watching. And we will be back next week for another installment, and I will try. I should have actually looked this up during the commercial break, but let's see. Next week is going to be Andrea Savar on the show with us, so I'm really excited about that. I believe our guest next week is going to be Nicole Kincaid. So be sure to tune in. And Dominic, thank you. Everybody who's watching, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll look forward to seeing you later. As we do at the end of every one of these broadcasts, we encourage you to stay in the moment, to be grateful and fill that moment with that gratitude. Grateful for what you've got, because there is absolutely no reason, if you're not grateful for what you've got right now, to be to suspect you're going to be any happier with more. And to always remember, my friends, that the best is yet to come. We'll talk to you soon.